shift back to my mat. Welcome to Wednesday, halfway through the week. And welcome back. Everybody who's here came last week. And so I'll kind of give a little intro. I don't know if either of you have taken a class with me before. So if this is repetitive, enjoy. If not, I'll just kind of tell you kind of my intention and kind of my style of yen and how I prefer to practice and teach, and just let you know some things that I like to offer to everyone. And so tonight's class will be completely on the ground, except for one pose. We'll do one inversion, and we'll have one kind of optional inversion. But also, is the sound outside distracting to anyone? Or is it fine? Okay. So yeah, so I got into teaching after being a part of Drishti/Woodlawn/Be Here Now yoga for many years. Just because my day job is a social worker at a high school, and I realized through social work grad school that my nervous system was not fine whatsoever. And so I started going to yoga just as 1 hour a week that I was taking care of myself, which became the most critical hour of my week. And so through the pandemic, yoga kind of became the only thing that consistently kept me grounded. And then I wanted to start teaching just to be able to offer a space amidst everything that we've all collectively experienced, just to take a breath and take a pause. And so the other reason why I teach my classes, sometimes mostly on the ground, is just because I think coming back to finding a space to calm and be still and just be seated, lying, and grounded can be maybe something that we don't often do throughout our days. We might be seated at our desks, or we're lying down at the start and the end of our day, but taking time to intentionally rest and intentionally focus on our bodies through focusing on our breath can really just help pay attention to our nerves and just notice the things that we maybe want to ignore or have ignored. And so one of the things that I like to remind everyone is similar to what we shared last week. If you feel emotions that come up throughout tonight's class, because we will be holding postures for 3 to 5 minutes, feel free to express those in whatever way makes sense for you. If that means that you want to cry, do that. If that means you want to move into a different pose, please do that. And everything I offer is just a suggestion. And so we'll be in postures for 3 to 5 minutes. And so if you ever feel sensation that's beyond sensation and moves more into a sense of pain, please change what you're doing. Since we're here in person, I can offer ideas and suggestions and come to you, which is really exciting. But if you just know that you need to intuitively move in a different way, or come into Shavasana or child's pose or anything that feels good for your body, just move. I like to teach yen from a place of thinking of ourselves on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is pain and 1 and 0 is a different opposite end, whatever that means for you. Think of pushing yourself to kind of a place of feeling sensation in your body, but never moving to pain. And so if you think of it as a pain scale, never move past about an 8 and in the sense of sensation. And so, but if you find yourself noticing that you're in a posture and you think you could move a little bit deeper, feel free to move a little bit deeper, but don't push yourself for the sake of pushing yourself because you feel like you should. Only do that if you feel like you want to experience something different. The other thing that I prefer to add into classes is the option to make something a little bit more restorative if you're looking for that tonight. And so I'll be timing our postures and let us know when we're about halfway through. So if you want to move into a more restorative or move a little bit deeper, that's an option for you. So just take what you need and not what you don't. And if you have any questions, let me know. And then the other piece is just we'll focus a lot on breath. And so if you ever get lost, come back to that, as in all yoga classes. And yeah, so we're going to start with a 5-minute opening, just meditation and breath exercise. And typically I would teach alternate nostril breathing. And so I'll offer some guidance on that if that's something you want to practice on your own at the end. But with masks, it's a little bit more difficult. So find yourself in whatever comfortable seat you already are in, or move in a way that you can sit for about 5 minutes. And go ahead and close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. Adjust in any way to add any props around you if you'd like to hold up your knees with anything. And just with your eyes closed, go ahead and Imagine somewhere in your mind that you have been in your life that felt peaceful. Maybe that's a scene in nature. Maybe it's a scene from a home that you've been to, or it's a memory that you go back to sometimes from your childhood, or maybe from earlier in the day. And just imagine yourself there, sitting or lying, and just begin to notice what's around you. I prefer to imagine myself at a waterfall. So if you're looking for a scene, go ahead and pretend that you are seated just behind a waterfall, underneath kind of a little cave sense of a waterfall, and the waterfall is draping over in front of you. And go ahead and begin to inhale and exhale through your nose if you're not already doing so. Just beginning to focus on your breath, maybe for the first time today. And see if you can notice the temperature of the air, the quality of your breath, how deeply you're breathing. And as you exhale, try and exhale out through your nose as well. And take one more breath, paying no attention to changing your breath, but on this breath, notice how deeply you're inhaling and where you feel that in your body when you have a complete inhale. And when you feel completely full, take an open mouth exhale, sigh it out, and see if that allows your shoulders to drop away from your ears anymore or changes anything in your body. And if you have yourself seated at a waterfall, begin to just notice in your mind how the waterfall is just cascading down over the rocks above you and creating just this little cocoon of a cave that you can just relax in. Maybe you hear the wind outside of where you're seated, and you imagine that that's the sound of the waterfall. And if you found yourself in a place that's familiar to you, just begin to notice what it feels like to be in the room that you're in your mind. Is there a certain temperature that you remember about this memory or place? Is there anything around you that makes noise, that calms you? And on your next inhale, begin to notice the ground underneath you, what you're sitting on, where your feet touch the ground, where your sit bones are touching the ground or any props underneath you. And see if you can take an inhale breath, imagining that you're breathing all the way down through your spine, all the way down into the seat, as if you're anchoring yourself to the ground. And at any time tonight, when you find yourself in a posture that you're wondering how much longer is left, just come back to this moment where you're noticing the parts of your body that are touching the ground, and just allow that to ground you. And ask yourself if you need to make a change in your body, or if you just need to stay a little bit more grounded and sit with that sensation. And continue breathing for another minute or so. And then we'll move into our first posture together. Go ahead and take one more inhale. Maybe on this inhale, you take the biggest breath that you've taken all day and see if you can feel yourself fill up as much as you think you possibly can. And on this inhale, if you're seated, go ahead and just inhale your shoulders up to your ears and just roll them back, beginning to open up your collarbones, your chest, moving your shoulders intentionally. Do that once more as you begin to flutter open your eyes, coming back to the space that you're in right now for this class, knowing that in any of these postures, you can come back to that place in your mind if you need to. And before we move, we're just gonna open and stretch out our neck or just see how it feels today. So take an inhale breath, and on your exhale, drop your right ear to your right shoulder. Looking down at your shoulder or up to the ceiling if you want to change that. Take one breath here. On an exhale, let your head drop a little bit more. And then on your next inhale, inhale your head back up to neutral, eyes open or closed. And then on an exhale, drop your left ear over to your left shoulder. Looking at your shoulder or the ceiling if you'd like to. Taking another inhale breath. Exhale, dropping a little bit deeper, changing your gaze. And then inhale your head back up to neutral. Flutter open your eyes if you had them closed. And our first pose is going to be child's pose. And so if you have a bolster that you would like to use, you're welcome to use that. But we're going to come into wide-legged child's pose. And so if you want to add your bolster, just place it a long ways on your mat. And go ahead and come on to hands and knees. Knees underneath your hips, hands just out in front of you. And then you can place the bolster between your knees if you want to. And settle your hips back, draping your chest over your bolster, stretching your arms out, and then dropping one side of your face to the bolster if you'd like to. And as we're here in child's pose, just notice how it feels to allow the floor or the prop underneath you to just completely support your chest and your upper body. And see if on an exhale, you can allow yourself to sink a little bit deeper into this prop, into this pose, and maybe your hips move a little bit farther back towards your heels. Maybe you feel yourself needing or wanting to hug the bolster or the prop to feel a different sense of support. Take whatever you need. And I like to open classes with a quote often from Brene Brown. And so tonight's quote from Brene Brown, who's a social worker and an author who works a lot in helping us realize how important feeling our feelings, being vulnerable, and being authentic in that with others can be. And the quote is, "We can't selectively numb our emotions. When we numb the painful ones, we also numb the positive ones." And so if at any time you find yourself tonight having emotional sensation come up, just encourage yourself to see if you can sit with that. See if you can maybe internally ask yourself some questions about it. Maybe what's brought it up, where it's coming from, or if you notice yourself resisting it, maybe just see if you can use your breath to come back to that visualization like we did at the beginning, and just allow that emotion to be there, knowing that it exists, it's part of your experience, and just let it be, and maybe think about it more later, or come back to it in a different pose. But try not to stuff it away. Just let it be. And use your breath as a way to just sit with it. And if you'd like to turn your head to the other side, go ahead and on your next inhale, lift your head up and place the opposite ear on the bolster. Take 2 more breaths here in child's pose, letting yourself just be held and supported by everything underneath you. Noticing your knees on the ground, tops of your feet on the ground. Sinking your hips back towards your heels, maybe a little bit more on an exhale breath. And if your arms are stretched out in front of you, or if they're not already, go ahead and stretch them out in front of you. Maybe stretch them a little bit farther, spread your fingers out, and just grip onto the mat and come up out of child's pose, back into a tabletop-like position. Shifting the bolster from in front of you to behind you as you sit back on your heels. We're going to move into saddle pose, which is basically, in my experience, almost the opposite of child's pose. And so if you know that your knees are not interested in saddle pose because you've tried that before, you can try this one leg at a time. But go ahead and shift your heels to the sides of your hips so that you can sit down between your hips. And see how that feels on your knees. If that's not something that works, stretch one leg out in front of you. But what we're going to do is take an inhale breath, grounding yourself back down into the ground. And then on an exhale breath, place your hands on the side of your heels and slowly walk yourself back so that your upper body drapes over the bolster behind you. Maybe you come down onto your elbows, and then lie yourself back on this bolster if you'd like, or just hold yourself up with your elbows. And you can use a couple breaths, or you can use the entire time that we're in this posture to shift yourself closer to lying back more onto this prop if that's comfortable for you. But moving from a face down kind of internal pose into a heart opening pose at the beginning of class can help us really open up anything that we might need to explore tonight on the mat. And if you're finding this posture challenging to get into, bring your hands to somewhere on your body, maybe your belly, or one hand on your belly and your heart, and come back to your breath. See if you can use an exhale breath to allow yourself to either sit or move in a different way into this posture that feels supportive for you. Seeing if you can make your exhales a little bit longer than your inhales. And if you're practicing this with one leg out and one leg bent at a time, take 2 more breaths and then slowly guide yourself up and switch which leg is extended. And then use your breath to guide yourself back down onto your prop. We'll take 6 more deep breaths in saddle pose. Noticing as you inhale, if you can feel your hip flexors and your legs and your thighs opening up. Feel them softening. And on an exhale, see if you can allow your chest and your back to sink a little bit farther into the proper support underneath you. Taking your final inhale breath, filling your belly all the way up. And on an exhale breath, plant your elbows on the ground, on the mat. Tuck your chin to your chest. And slowly begin to press your forearms into the mat. And then come up to your palms. And then really, really slowly bring your upper body back up. If your knees are tucked underneath you, both of them, go ahead and just sit to one side and swing your legs out in front of you. And I like to just bounce my legs up and down, maybe bend and straighten your legs a little bit. Just let them lengthen back out fully together. Maybe windshield wiper your legs and ankles to the sides. Just feeling the full length of your legs. Take an inhale breath, and we're just going to inhale and stretch on our spine. So take an inhale and lift your arms up above your head. Feeling if you can feel yourself trying to reach to the ceiling. And on an exhale breath, just bring your arms down by your sides, sweeping them out. And just feel yourself sitting. And the next thing that we're going to move into is a seated forward fold. And we all do different things throughout our day. And so I want to give a couple options. And so you can do a wide-legged forward fold, a caterpillar fold, or a butterfly forward fold, depending on what your legs and your hips need today. And so if you want to do a wide-legged fold, just go ahead and stretch your legs out at 90 or 45-ish degree angles. Or move your legs into butterfly with your feet together. Or you can keep your legs as they pretty much are right now if you had them just both outstretched and place the bolster on top of them. And take an inhale breath wherever you are sitting up. And then on an exhale breath, just place your hands on the ground or the mat in front of you and walk them forward, noticing as you're moving down if maybe you want to change which leg variation you're in. And then drop your head down, dropping your chin to your chest, letting your head just hang. Maybe this allows your neck to relax a little more. Maybe you want to walk your hands out a little bit more. So find a space that you feel like you can be in for about 5 minutes here in a forward fold, allowing your back body to stretch out, adding any props underneath you if you'd like to support your head. Noticing if you would like a different leg position, go ahead and make that change if you'd like to open your legs, shift a butterfly, or bring them back together and add a prop. More of a caterpillar forward fold. But just see if in this posture we can both be opening and allowing ourselves to feel supported simultaneously. Take an inhale breath, and on an exhale, really sink in to where you feel like is your edge of sensation, but also an edge where you can feel like you can sit and rest in an active rest. Close your eyes if they're not already closed. And just drop into that space. Remembering what it's like to just take time to rest and be. Coming back to your breath.
And if you have your forehead resting on something and you want to explore an extra sensation that can ease your facial muscles and also just help calm your body, maybe you want to press your forehead into where your face is resting and just kind of roll side to side, massaging the area between your eyebrows, noticing any sensation that that can offer, using your exhales to see if you can soften the muscles in your forehead, muscles in your neck, maybe the muscles in your hips a little bit. You have about a minute or so left in this pose. And so if there's anything else that you wanted to try adding or adjusting, go ahead and do so. And without moving your upper body, just go ahead and stretch your arms out and plant them on the mat or the ground, stretching them out similar to how we did in child's pose. And then if your chin is tucked to your chest, untuck it just a little bit so that you can begin to bring your hands into kind of a spider-like arms formation and just walk yourself back up slowly from this forward fold, one vertebrae at a time. Being really mindful to just come out maybe slowly, more slowly than you came in. Bringing your head up last. And with your eyes closed, take another inhale breath here. And then open them up on the exhale. And from here, we're going to shift back onto our hands and knees and just open our spine a little bit more before we move into our one inversion of downward dog. So go ahead and shift the bolster off your mat temporarily and move into tabletop position. We're going to flow through 10 rounds of cat-cow. Just get ourselves more moving for just a few moments. Go ahead and plant your knees under your hips, hands under your shoulders. Take an inhale breath, drop your belly, look up to the sky and the ceiling. And then an exhale breath, drop your head, arch your spine. And we'll do this 9 more times on our own. Inhaling to drop our belly, exhale to curl our spine. And I encourage you to try this with your eyes closed so that you can focus just on the breath. Inhaling and exhaling fully, as slowly as you need to. There's no rush to get anywhere. About halfway through these rounds of cat-cow. And when you finish with cat-cow, go ahead and consider noticing if you want to add some hip circles in while we're on our hands and knees to just wake up your hips in any other way. Or maybe you want to wag your tail and look over one shoulder towards one hip. Or continue with a couple extra rounds of cat-cow.
Noticing your spine, noticing what it's like to move with your breath. And then when you're ready, come back to neutral. Take your time. And finish whichever movement you're working through and find yourself back in a neutral spine. We're gonna walk our hands just about one handprint forward, tuck our toes under, and send our hips up to the sky into a downward facing dog. Maybe your knees are really, really bent as you move into it, because this is a very different position than you've been in today or in a while. So go ahead and just walk out this dog, bending one knee at a time, shifting your hips a little bit side to side. And then take a couple breaths to settle into a downward dog where you can take an inhale, and then on the exhale, let your heels sink towards the mat, sending your hips up to the sky, dropping your head, shaking it side to side to allow any extra release in your neck. And we're going to flow through a three-legged dog with the option to move into scorpion on our way to lizard and pigeon pose. So we'll start with our right leg, keeping both of our hands planted. Lift up your right leg to the sky into a three-legged dog. Option to bend your knee and open up that hip into scorpion. And then on an exhale, swing that leg through. Bring your foot to the outside of your right foot. If that's available to you, go ahead and drop that left knee down to the mat. You'll find yourself in a lizard lunge. We won't stay in this for a full 3 minutes necessarily, but go ahead and find your hands on the inside of your feet. And go ahead and notice how your hip feels. Maybe you want to shift a little bit forward and backward slightly to allow yourself to settle in. And just begin to feel into your right hip and your left hip and notice where on an exhale breath you might soften a little bit more or make an adjustment. And if you'd like to, in this lizard lunge, peel open that right leg so you lift up the right big toes and kind of open up your foot to the side, swinging your hip knee out and come down onto forearms. That can add a different sensation to your hip. If this is exactly where you need to be, because this is a lot of sensation for you, just stay there. Every version of the pose is the pose. And this class is designed for you to be able to sit in stillness with yourself through your breath. I like to use yen practice as a way to practice what it's like to sit with things that I wasn't expecting. They might be a little bit more difficult than I might have been expecting, or they feel completely foreign to me. Because I think many of the things in yoga that we do on the mat have a completely related use off the mat. And so sometimes sitting with physical sensation can help us learn how to sit with emotional discomfort or sensation. And so if that's what you're experiencing right now, see if you can ask yourself to use this as practice and ask yourself to use this as a way to begin to know that you can sit with hard things and you can work with them. They won't take over, but they are there for just a little bit longer. And also use this as a way to trust yourself and know what you need. If you need to make a change, make a change. If you had your foot peeled open and you want to make that change, do that. If you didn't and you'd like to try it, do that. Be here for 5 more breaths. Taking 1 more breath in this lizard lunge. On an exhale breath, if you had your foot open, go ahead and plant the bottom of your foot back on the mat. and shift your right hand to the outside of your right leg. And then we're just gonna move our right foot across our mat so that we can move directly into pigeon pose from lizard. And so begin to shift your foot so that it's the outside of edge of your foot is kind of moving across the mat. You're dropping your right knee down. You probably will need to move your left leg forward a little bit. And you're right here in pigeon. If your bolster is nearby and you want to bring it out in front of you, feel free to do that. And with your hands planted, we'll take an inhale breath. And on an exhale, we'll move right into sleeping swan or pigeon, coming down with your arms on your bolster or your forearms down onto the mat. And let your next exhale just allow you, similar to what we did in child's pose, to just fully surrender into everything underneath you. Always coming back to your breath if you find yourself getting distracted. And if you are working with the idea of sitting with emotion tonight, or you want to, just pick a feeling that you have noticed coming up for you in the last 24 hours or maybe the last week, more than once. And maybe just consider how you can explore that a little bit more through asking yourself where it came from, maybe visualizing what it was like when you experienced it and it felt maybe a little hard to sit with. And then use your breath to encourage yourself to sit with the physical sensation right now and the emotional sensation the next time you experience that. Knowing that emotions can cause our heart rate to move faster, cause our breath to get more shallow, and that we can use our breath to encourage ourselves to just sit and pause and make a choice at how we respond with our emotions. So use that time right now to just be with your breath, be with your body, and just be still. Take 2 more breaths in this side. And on your next breath, go ahead and plant your hands back on the mat. Coming back, moving your upper body back up. When you're ready, tucking your back left toe. We're just going to come right back through to that 3-legged dog, which is kind of a big transition, but we're just going to shift out of this into that posture in whatever way makes the most sense for you. So planting your hands, lifting that right leg up, sending it all the way back through. Maybe you want to open to scorpion this time. Take 2 breaths here in this 3-legged dog, opening back up from that big pose we were just in, and then sitting your right leg back down on the mat, back into downward dog. Walking out your dog, shifting your hips any way that you need to, and then pausing for a breath and stillness. Noticing if anything feels different on each side. And then when you're ready, planting your right foot, inhale and lift your left leg up to 3-legged dog, opening the hip if you'd like into scorpion, or bending your knee,
And then on an exhale, bringing that left foot outside your left hand into a lunge. Drop your right knee, untuck the toes, and bring your left hand on the inside of your left foot. And now we find ourselves in lizard on this side. Adjusting any props that you want or you need. And then take an inhale breath, notice where you are. And take an exhale breath and open up your foot if you'd like. Bring your forearms down to the mat if you'd like. Or come down onto a prop. Being mindful that in two-sided postures, we often have an expectation that we'll be able to do one thing on one side that we did on the other, and our bodies are not symmetrical in that way all the time. So if you were able to come all the way deeply down on one side and can't on the other side, or vice versa, just sit with that. It doesn't necessarily mean anything specific other than that our bodies are not as symmetrical as we sometimes expect them to be. Each pose on each side is a different pose. So just be with that. Use your next exhale to settle into where you'll be for the next couple minutes. Returning to your breath if you find yourself feeling more sensation than you expected. Asking yourself where you can soften on an exhale or just sit with things on your exhale, not trying to make any change, just being where you already are. Take 2 more breaths on this side, and then we'll shift into pigeon pose with our left leg forward when we're ready. And so on an exhale breath, move your left arm or left hand outside your left leg and begin to walk that left leg across your mat so that your left foot comes towards your right wrist. You drop your left knee down towards your left hand. Adjust your back leg forward some if you need to. And add any props underneath your chest that you would like. Taking an inhale upright and then draping yourself forward on an exhale breath over your props down onto your forearms. And maybe your forehead can reach down onto the floor or a prop or your mat. And just sink in to this active resting posture that's incredibly it mirrors some other poses where we've done with compression and opening simultaneously. And just let it do what it needs to do for you tonight. We have about a minute left on this side. Coming back to your breath, seeing if on an exhale you can sink any deeper or stay any longer in the movement and the posture that you're in. Being reminded that each side is different, so not judging yourself if one side is easier or harder. Maybe asking yourself if there is anything throughout your day that you need to adjust in your movement or your activity. If you notice that imbalance might have a reason. On an inhale breath, plant your hands back on the mat. Walk your upper body back up. Tuck that back toe underneath. And then in your own way, come back to that three-legged dog, sweeping that knee back through, up to the sky, opening into scorpion if you would like to, with bending your knee. Take an exhale. And then set your left foot back down next to your right. And you're welcome, we're gonna pause before we move to our next posture. You're welcome to stay in downward dog or drop your knees and come into child's pose for about a minute. Just taking time to let the first part of class settle into your body. Notice anything that's different than a bit ago. Coming back to your breath or your focus if you lost it, or just resting for a minute. Nothing to focus on. And on your next breath, come back to tabletop position, either from downward dog or child's pose. Your hips above your knees, shoulders above your wrists. Flow through one cat-cow, moving your spine again. Inhaling, dropping your belly. And exhale, dropping your head. And then shift back to sitting on your heels for just a moment. We're going to move into supported bridge pose. And if you would prefer, you could move into supported fish pose. But my lower back has been needing bridge pose a lot lately. And so you can do this either with blocks if you have them or with your bolster. I like to do it with a bolster, so that's what I'll cue it through, but you're welcome to use blocks. And so go ahead and grab your bolster and sit it up kind of if you are facing your mat in the way that everyone except me is. Go ahead and set your bolster across your mat where you might sit a block for a bridge pose. Or actually, we're going to do it in a different way. Make it perpendicular like we did before if you're using your bolster. And then sit on the bolster, shifting it to where you're sitting at the back of it. And we're kind of now in almost a reverse tabletop almost. And go ahead and shift so that you can lie yourself down with your knees pointed up to the ceiling, feet planted on the mat, so that the bolster is underneath your back. And I like to try this with butterfly legs. And so you can keep your knees pointed up to the ceiling if you'd like, or you can bring the soles of your feet together so that your feet are resting on your mat, on your bolster, together in butterfly legs. And most of your spine is not on the bolster, but your lower back is resting on it. Your shoulders are on the mat. And bring your hands to your belly and take an inhale breath and completely fill up your belly. It's a big belly breath, as big as you can get. And take an open mouth exhale and let yourself sink into the mat. And allow your hips to be higher than your heart. Just resetting as we move into the last bit of practice together. Coming back into these upward facing positions. Heart opening in some sense. And close your eyes if
If you feel comfortable, drop back into your breath. And just let yourself be supported here. And if you have your hands on your body and you'd like to try a different opening, go ahead and just raise your hands up over your head so that your arms are pointing opposite of your feet. Or bring your arms out to the side and see what it feels like to allow yourself to feel a little bit more surrendered on an exhale, letting your hands sink into the ground, either out to your sides or above your head. Just being here. And if you work on a screen throughout your day and you notice that your eyes feel a little bit tired by the end of the day, it might feel nice to rock the side of your head, or rock the back of your head side to side, kind of massaging the back of your head on the floor, similar to how we did with the space between our eyebrows. Just letting that movement be helpful if it is, staying in stillness if you'd like. Take 3 more breaths here in this pose before we move on. And when you're ready, if you had your feet in butterfly, go ahead and spread your feet apart. Bring the soles of your feet back down to the mat so that your knees are pointed back up to the ceiling. And press your feet into the mat and lift your hips up so that you can move the bolster out from underneath you. And then just come to lying flat on your back, with your knees still pointed up to the ceiling. Bring the soles of your feet out to the edges of your mat and let your knees drop together, allowing your back to just fully press into the mat, your lower back to relax, your spine to come back to neutral. And take 3 breaths here in this posture. And our second to last posture will be either waterfall, which is legs up against the wall without a wall in front of us, or happy baby. We'll spend about 1.5 minutes in this pose. And so go ahead and inhale and curl your knees into your chest. Wrap your arms around them. And see if you can curl yourself into a tiny, tight little ball as much as you can. Maybe rock side to side. See how your lower back feels and decide which of those 2 things you'd like to try. If you'd like to try both, I'll make time for that. And then on an exhale breath, bring your arms down to your sides. And if you'd like to try waterfall pose, just extend your feet up towards the ceiling, straightening your legs as much as you'd like. Or if you'd like to be in happy baby for an additional hip opener, From your having your legs straight up, just grab the outsides of your feet and bring your knees down as if you're trying to reach them into your armpits. Wherever you are, just hold on to your feet if you're in happy baby, or keep your legs straight up if you're in waterfall pose. Just focus on being still in this position. If you have trouble falling asleep at night, it can be nice if you have your bed next to a wall to just shift to the edge closest to the wall, extend your feet up the side of the wall, or a headboard if you have that, and just maybe set a timer for a couple minutes, or just sit and breathe in this posture until you begin to feel tired. It can be really helpful after a long day, whether that be physically long, emotionally long, or just busy in some other type of way. Just sit in this pose and be standing upside down almost. And maybe you want to rock side to side in waterfall. Or maybe you want to stay still in happy baby if you've been rocking side to side. Take 2 more breaths wherever you are, and then switch to the position that you didn't try for 5 breath cycles and see how it feels. Just explore the position that you weren't in. So if you were in happy baby, extend your feet up towards the ceiling. If you were in waterfall, spread your feet and bring your knees down into your armpits. Maybe you want to extend one leg and have one knee bend. But just be here for about a minute before we move into our final posture series, which will be a twist for the evening, and then a shavasana period. And when you're ready, curl your knees back into your chest, wrap your arms back around them, and then plant the soles of your feet back down on the mat in front of you. Knees about hip width distance. And we're going to move into supine twist with eagle legs as an option to add a little bit of an extra twist to it. And so you don't necessarily need any props, but if you would like to have somewhere for your knees to rest on as we twist side to side, bring the bolster or blocks to one side of your mat. And that's the side that you'll twist to first. And so with your feet planted on the mat, go ahead and press into the mat and lift up your hips and shift them to the opposite side a little bit of where your prop is so that we can drape our knees over there. And then I'm going to be twisting my knees to the left first. And so inhale and lift up your right leg, cross it over your left so that you're in kind of an eagle leg twist. And then take another inhale and then exhale, drop your knees over to the left if your right leg is on top. And try and keep both of your shoulders on the mat. Looking up to the ceiling with your eyes open or closed. Allowing the entire right side of your body, if your knees are dropped to the left, to feel a sense of opening all the way down your side body, across your hips, across your thighs and your IT band, and down into your knee. Maybe you want to extend your right arm up above your head to add even more of a stretch across your right side. Or maybe you want to have it out to the side or place your hand somewhere on your body. Just settle into this twist and allow it to just wring out anything else that you need to let go of through the exhales in this posture. And so as you inhale, see if you can fill yourself up while also being twisted. And on an exhale, see if you can just let something go, soften, and relax down into the mat. Take 3 more breaths with your legs dropped to one side. Seeing if your exhales can allow you to soften anywhere else, twist any deeper, or just be where you are. And then when you're ready, before we bring our knees back up, go ahead and uncross your legs and just leave your knees stacked, dropped to the side. Take an inhale breath. And on the exhale, untwist your knees so that both of your knees point back up towards the ceiling. Pressing your feet into the ground and bringing your hips back to center. And you can either extend your legs out long for just a breath or two, or bring your feet to the outsides of the mat and drop your knees together. Just come back to neutral for just a minute. Just a couple breaths. Noticing the differences between each side that currently exist, if any. And then on an inhale breath, bending your knees, bringing the soles of the feet back to the mat, pointing your knees up to the ceiling. And getting ready for the other side. If you used a prop on one side, shift it to the other side of your mat. And then with our feet planted, knees up to the ceiling, this time we'll take an inhale and lift up our left leg, cross it over our right leg, press that foot into the mat a little bit to shift our hips a little bit to the left. And then on an exhale, drop our knees over to the right side. And adjusting your props as you need, noticing that, again, each side is different. Each pose is different. And maybe this is different than what you've done before in this posture. And it might be different than what you'll do in the future. But just be where you are right now. Breathe into this twist and let something soften on the exhale. And this is our final posture before Shavasana. So get whatever else you need from movement and postures tonight, knowing that in a few minutes we'll move into Shavasana, and then we'll move into whatever's next for us.